Welcome back to the Inner Altar. We are now in episode 4. This has been quite a journey so far, so thank you for coming along. And if you're just tuning in right now, then thank you as well. And if you haven't already, listen to episode 1 and 2 and 3. You might just want to go back and take a little journey with us from the very beginning. So, this episode is quite the one. Oh, the inner child. When I think of my inner child, I don't just think of like who I was. I think of the parts of me that kind of never really left. The little girl who learned how to stay quiet, be good, stay strong, the resilience. She still shows up in my life in ways that I'm constantly discovering, especially now as a mother to 2 little girls. When I connect to my inner child, I see a little girl who was imaginative and sensitive, but also very deeply loving and incredibly aware, but also one who learns certain survival patterns that still to this day echo into my adulthood. It's having a reaction as an adult that feels way bigger than the actual moment. I mean, this happens to me all the time, more than I'd like to admit. I think one of the biggest misconceptions about healing is that people think we're just trying to get over our childhood. I don't think that's actually the goal. I think the goal is understanding how much of our childhood is still living inside of us, because the truth is our inner child never leaves. She grows up, she gets a job, she pays bills, she gets married, she has children, she learns how to survive. And if I'm being honest, most of us are still reaching from places that were created decades ago. Not because we're broken, not because we're immature, but because children are constantly creating meaning out of the world around them. Every experience becomes a story. Every disappointment becomes a belief, that voice in their head, our heads. Like every wound becomes a survival strategy. And then one day you're in your 30s wondering why you have such a hard time resting, why you feel responsible for everyone, why you struggle to receive help. Because let me tell you what, I have the hardest time with that, and why rejection feels so fucking painful. That's my issue. Tie in rejection with abandonment, like we're done. And then constantly having to try to prove your worth. It becomes this vicious cycle of unhealed parts of your inner child, deep core wounds. And then when you start digging, that's when you begin to really realize that maybe this isn't about adulthood at all. Maybe this just all started a very long time ago, and we need to unpack it and address it. Because, I mean, when I look back at my childhood, one thing that has always fascinated me was how much of it I actually don't remember. Let me say that again. How much of my childhood I actually don't remember, because it's insane. People will talk about memories or, family vacations and things and elementary, like all the things. And I just genuinely have huge chunks out of my childhood that feel completely inaccessible. Like somebody took a book and ripped out entire chapters. There's ages that I don't remember. And I don't know if that's just because life happened or because certain parts of me learned how to survive by forgetting. But when I think about my childhood, there are only a few things that do stand out clearly. And I remember being outside a lot, all day, riding bikes, exploring, climbing trees, making up games, being creative, playing with the neighborhood kids, coming home when the street lights turned on. Barbies. I was a major Barbie girl, just creating worlds, entire worlds with them, giving them stories and relationships and adventures. And my Gosh, and honestly, like looking back now, I think little Ronnie was already an artist. She was already a storyteller, creating alternate realities with her imagination. But I also do remember my parents fighting a lot. I remember tension. I remember conflict. I remember having to be a mediator at 5 years old between two adults. I remember the feeling of something not being okay. And what's interesting is that as children, we don't have the emotional maturity to understand what is happening, but we have a feeling. We can tell when an environment takes a shift in energy. We don't say my parents are struggling in their relationship. We don't say they're navigating adult problems. We internalize it and we absorb it. We make it mean something about us because children are emotional sponges. They don't just witness an environment, they become the environment. And I think so many of us are carrying emotions that were never actually ours to begin with. I am the oldest daughter of three, and being the oldest daughter has shaped me in ways that I'm still uncovering because there is an unspoken role that the eldest daughters often step into. At the age of 7, I became second mom right off the bat. I witnessed my brother being born at 7 years old, witnessed the entire thing. And I mean, from the get, he was my baby. And, when you are the eldest daughter, you become responsible and capable and really fucking dependable. You become the one that everyone expects to have it together. You become the helper, the caretaker, the peacemaker, the fixer. And somewhere along the way, you learn that being needed feels safer than having. Let that sink in. Okay, let's say that one more time. Being needed feels safer than having needs. Because if everyone else is okay, then maybe everything is okay. But that comes with a cost because what happens is you grow into an adult woman who struggles to receive. You overgive, you overfunction, you carry emotional loads that were never, again, yours to carry. You feel guilty resting. You feel guilty saying no. You feel guilty putting yourself first when it's totally fucking okay to, and from the outside, people say, wow, she's so strong. Meanwhile, you're fucking exhausted. Not because you're weak, but because you've been carrying people your entire life. But having children has been one of the most healing, but also the most triggering experiences of my life because my daughters are constantly introducing me to younger versions of myself every single day. Every single day. I'll be watching them playing and just remember being outside for hours like they love to be. I remember imagination and freedom and what it felt like to exist before everything became fucking complicated. But there are moments that are hard, like when they're crying and when they're overwhelmed and when they're acting out. And suddenly I realize this isn't just about them. This is touching something inside of me too, because motherhood has shown me all the places where I needed more comfort, more patience, a little bit more reassurance. Motherhood has truly shown me where I still need healing. And it's an ongoing, everyday journey. It truly is because parenting and raising children truly isn't just about raising children. It's reparenting yourself while you're raising them. And it's truly some of the deepest work that I have been dealing with head on. And besides of motherhood, like my inner child shows up in my relationship constantly when I feel unheard or rejected or abandoned, misunderstood, because suddenly I'm not 32 anymore. I am 7. I am 10. I am 12. I am standing in an old wound. And I also think that's why relationships are such powerful mirrors because they reveal where healing is needed the most. It's never really about like the dishes or text messages or communication. Underneath it all, it's usually just so much more deeper than that. Am I safe? Am I loved? Do I matter? Will you stay? I mean, those are inner child questions. But to alchemize all of it into one as an almost 33-year-old woman, it's been layer after layer that I've had to peel back and continue looking inward and outward at the same damn time because I'm continuously trying to alchemize this. I want to turn grief into compassion and heartbreak into wisdom, survival into purpose. I want my daughters to inherit less pain and more peace. So the older I get, though, the more that I'm realizing that healing isn't about becoming somebody new. It's just more about like returning back home to myself, playing Barbies again with my daughters, letting little Ronnie take over and drive the vehicle for a while. the Barbie, the Barbie vehicle for a while, play outside until the streetlights come on. It's healing for me to give my children a childhood that they don't have to heal from. And that's ultimately the biggest, most beautiful blessing that I can give my own inner child. It's just asking to be fully and deeply loved. I've learned to reparent myself in ways and unlearn certain things, but also affirm and reassure to my inner child that she did the best she could with what she had at that time. The resources, the knowledge, the emotions, the experiences. It's deep, sacred work, reparenting yourself while also raising children. And there's something about a mother and a daughter dynamic because all I'm ever trying to be is the mother that I needed the most. And what little me needed the most was just safety. And I also connect with her deeply when I look at Sequoia and Nova. I was the kind of little girl that I worried a lot about what people thought of me. I worried about what my hair looked like, what clothes I was wearing, what shoes I was wearing, what backpack I had. I was very insecure about my appearance and my presence. And as early as I can remember, like second grade, Sequoia's age, I was just always so deeply insecure. And Sequoia is so opposite of that. She will wear the funniest outfits. She doesn't care if her hair is a mess. She doesn't care if she doesn't match. Like, she is so uniquely special in that type of way where she just truly doesn't care. And I honor that so much in her because I was never like that. And I hope that sticks with her for the rest of her life. And she continues to shine in her own unique little ways because that's all I ever wish I could do for myself. But not only just Sequoia, Nova too, because if I could teach them these different things, a different way that I was taught, then hopefully they can teach their daughters a different way too. And it can pass down to different generations. And these curses and these traumas, they can be broken. So if there's one thing I hope that you take away from this conversation, it's this, that there is going to be times that you're going to get triggered and you're going to get overwhelmed and you're going to feel like you're not chosen, seen, or loved. But that is not weakness at all. It's just a younger version of you asking for attention instead of abandonment. Because I think so many of us spend our lives trying to outrun our childhood when maybe healing is simply just turning around and extending a hand to the little person who's been trying to keep up all along. Because it is still a very big world for that inner child of yours, for all of ours. And so maybe tonight, instead of criticizing yourself for the way that you may have reacted, just get curious and ask yourself, how old do I feel right now? What did I need back then that I still might be craving today, right now? Because that is where the true awareness comes from. If we could become so self-aware that when we're getting triggered or overwhelmed or an old wound is surfacing, instead of acting on that old wound or that trigger or that trauma or that hurt or whatever, we can alchemize it and begin to heal. because that is where it truly begins, is awareness. So for me, healing hasn't looked like taking the pain, the grief, the confusion, all that, the memories I can't access, the memories that I just wish I could fucking forget, and choosing to create something beautiful from them instead of more trauma. And by this, it's through motherhood, through art, through massage, through conversations like this, through real, raw, unfiltered conversations that just can resonate with so many other people and make you feel a little less alone. Through simply showing up as the most authentic version of myself that I can be is what is the most healing thing for little Ronnie. I don't believe we came here to be perfect. I think we just came here to fully experience ourselves in such a true, authentic way, to gather every forgotten piece of ourselves and lovingly bring it back home. So if your inner child has been loud and cranky and toddler-like lately, maybe she doesn't need you to silence her. Maybe she just wants to have you just sit down with her for a moment. Tell her she's safe. Tell her she's okay. She's never too much. So thank you for sitting with me in this conversation and allowing me to share a piece of my heart. The inner child runs really deep, and who knows, there might be a part two, because this is just scratching the surface of inner child. And I know I'll dive into the angry, angsty inner teenager. So if this episode did resonate with you, I really would love for you to share it with someone who might need the reminder as well that healing isn't linear. None of us are doing this alone. Okay, guys. So until next time, just be gentle with yourselves. Become a little bit more aware of the inner child that is just trying to be heard within you, because she's still listening. Let me tell you that the inner child in you is definitely still listening. And every time you choose compassion over criticism and presence over perfection and love over fear, all the beautiful things that are just so much better for our brains, it truly does not only rewrite the story that may have started long ago, but it rewires our brains. So take care of yourself, and I'll talk to you guys soon.